minutes off the bench. Goes around to Gumake, drives baseline, and shot rejected by Izzy McMcGork. In pain after she caught that fingertip in the eye or right around it.
And kind of swatted at Caitlin. Did you intend to hit her in the eye?
I feel like I'm just at the point where you accept it and don't retaliate. Like, you know, just let them hit you, be what it is. Don't let it get inside your head and know it's coming. I think at this point, like, I know I'm going to take a couple hard shots a game. It is what it is, I guess. I don't know.
Caitlin Clark's arrival in the WNBA was eagerly awaited by both fans and experts, as the brightest star of college basketball now shines a new light on the women's professional league. However, it seems the league's veterans didn't get the memo, greeting Clark with a mix of tough defense, dismissive quotes, and outright taunting. While this kind of treatment is typical for rookies stepping into the big leagues, with Clark, everything has been heightened, leading to an unprecedented level of trash talk. However, her rivals are quickly learning that poking the bear might not be the best idea. Increasingly, those who have dared to disrespect her find themselves on the wrong end of a revenge game. Each deep three-pointer Clark drains over a rival who previously insulted her sends a clear message to any future challengers. She's not one to mess with. This is a clear indication of a superstar in the making, particularly when you consider how quickly Clark has adapted to a new style of basketball and a much tougher level of competition. While almost everyone agrees that she has the talent to excel at the highest level, her toughness and ability to handle physicality have been questioned both by the media and her opponents. Early in her rookie year, Clark became a prime target for WNBA players seeking attention, and the treatment persisted even as her performance noticeably improved and she began putting up historic numbers. To her credit, Clark never seemed fazed, always maintained her composure when discussing opponents, and began standing her ground when bigger, more experienced players tried to push her around. The list of Caitlin Clark's haters includes players of different profiles, ranging from fellow rookies to aging superstars. Apparently, many WNBA players think they are better than Clark, but are unable to back up their rude words and actions when it counts the most. A common theme is appearing trash-talking a player as talented and competitive as Caitlin Clark is highly likely to bring out the natural-born scorer in her. Let's look at some instances of bad behavior by WNBA players backfiring on them. Dana Evans of the Chicago Sky is a fiery guard who makes up for lack of size by competing very hard and never giving up on the play. When her team faced Clark and the Indiana Fever in a WNBA regular season game, the diminutive point guard standing at just 5'6" felt the need to show the rookie that no easy points are given in the pro league. That's what any competitor would try to do, but unfortunately, Evans crossed the line between playing tough defense and engaging in a street fight. Just take a look at this collision that caused a lot of hot emotions among players from both teams. As Caitlin drove around her and approached the basket, Dana Evans locked elbows with the rookie and basically crashed her into a waiting defender, the stout Chennedy Carter. More about her in a minute. The result was a human sandwich where Clark was literally smashed by both opponents and was lucky to avoid serious injury. That wasn't all, as some choice words were said that the microphones didn't pick up. This highly emotional flare-up might have shaken up the confidence of a lesser player, but for Clark, it merely provided some extra motivation to get back at her tormentor by scoring at will. Here is what unfolded in the minutes after the foul. Swish, swish, and swish. It's clear that Clark is not easily intimidated and that she is more than willing to endure some physical pain to prove her worth as a basketball player. Instead of looking for payback in the form of physical altercation, she simply took control of the game and reminded everyone why she is one of the most feared players with the ball in her hands. The Chicago Sky wanted to bait her into losing her cool, but ended up losing the game in part due to ill-advised fouls on Clark. WNBA players are not chirping at Caitlin Clark only after they get frustrated with her offensive feats. They are frequently objecting to her defensive plays too. Despite criticizing her for being soft and unprepared for physical contact, Clark also gets the heat when she starts applying the same kind of physicality that she is routinely subjected to. One situation where that was abundantly clear was her run-in with Kalia Copper, a high-scoring wing playing for the Phoenix Mercury. After her drive to the basket was stopped by a foul committed by Clark, Copper immediately started talking trash and attempted to get in Clark's face. While the situation never deteriorated to the level that would endanger the players, it serves as a good example of the double standards that Caitlin has to live with every night. The video clearly shows what happened, although unfortunately we don't have a transcript of what was said in the heat of the moment. Any basketball coach would tell you that when you need to commit a foul, you should make sure the opponent doesn't score, and that's really all that Caitlin Clark did on that play. Apparently, Kahleah Copper didn't think so, and considered the contact to be excessive to the point of being dirty. Her reaction is quite forceful, and she needed to be separated from Clark, who remained cool and merely retorted, "It was just a foul," before walking away to avoid further conflict. While we can't really judge what was on Copper's mind when she reacted to the foul, it's fair to ask whether the identity of her opponent played a role, and whether she would have started talking so aggressively had someone else fouled her. In her usual manner, Caitlin decided to let her game do the talking. Despite all the provocations, she refused to change her approach and played a steady game that greatly contributed to another Fever victory in front of the home fans. The score remained close well into the final quarter, but Clark and her teammates never let the Mercury mount a comeback. When it was time to seal the deal, Caitlin skillfully navigated through a bunch of double teams and unselfishly passed the ball to open teammates rather than trying to be a hero and win all by herself. Her final assist of the night was truly a thing of beauty. She is literally toying with the defense and has full awareness of where everyone is on the court and who will get open if she attacks the basket. It's somewhat surprising that some of the biggest trash talkers against Caitlin Clark are veteran players who should know better, but nevertheless get caught in a moment and display poor sportsmanship. Las Vegas Aces guard Alysha Clark falls into this category since she is a 3-time WNBA champion, 3 ex-Israeli League champion, and the reigning 6th Women of the Year in WNBA. At the mature age of 37, she has no business doling out cheap shots to rookies, but during the match against Indiana Fever, she was so concerned about Caitlin Clark scoring on her that she simply whacked her on the head. The following video presents her in a really bad light.
First quarter, the Fever getting their first win last night in Los Angeles. That's had to be pretty tough, I would think, on Caitlin to just really...
And she should definitely be ashamed from acting like this on the basketball court. Not only did Alysha Clark commit a type of foul that shouldn't be a part of the game at all, but after being called for it, she runs away in a fit of rage, as to imply that she blocked the shot cleanly. That's total nonsense. You can literally see Caitlin's head bob back and forth after the impact, so Alysha had to be aware that she made contact. Acting all surprised and angry about the ref's call feels totally disingenuous. And honestly, it is more befitting a rookie than a seasoned veteran with a ton of hardware in her trophy case. Again, it's hard to believe that she would have behaved like that had any other player been the victim of her irresponsible foul. But since there is an underlying animosity against Caitlin Clark across the league, she couldn't just raise her hand and apologize after the fact. Since somebody has to act as an adult in this situation, Caitlin Clark took that responsibility upon herself. As you could see in the previous clip, she just made sure her eye was okay and then went into a huddle to prepare for the continuation of play. No drama, no chasing Alysha Clark around the court, no pretending to be street tough. She took the foul in stride and went straight back to playing basketball. If anything, the foul served only to wake her up and help sharpen her focus, as she was not having the best game before she was hit. Afterwards, she picked up the pace and started putting the ball into the basket with much improved efficiency. Here is how she looked for the remainder of the match against the Aces.
Play if they're going to pull the upset here. Watch this screen and then a nice pocket pass. No.
Her repertoire of slick passes and deep shots was on full display, and she finished with a double-double again with 13 points and 11 assists. The scoring was a bit under her average, and it wasn't enough to avert a loss to a dominant Aces team that is currently sitting in second place in the Western Conference and features the last year's MVP in Aja Wilson. That's why we can't say that Caitlin Clark truly avenged this foul just yet. Seattle Storm is another team that decided to put Clark to a test and ended up paying dearly for this mistake. During a game against Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark, multiple players tried some roughhouse tactics in a futile bid to slow Clark's momentum. One player in particular acted in a way that's not tolerated even on a neighborhood playground, let alone in a professional game broadcast to a national audience. Storm shooting guard Victoria Vivians, who suited up for the Fever until last year, took exception to Clark's offensive onslaught and started talking trash, while the two were getting back on defense after another deep three by Clark. The scene looked quite ugly.
We might need to update the graphic now.
And could have gotten even worse if not for Vivian's teammates, who promptly got between her and Clark to prevent an escalation. The home crowd at the Gainbridge Fieldhouse reacted quite loudly to Vivian's attempt to rattle the local hero, but the passions eventually cooled down. One person that wasn't particularly incensed, that would be Caitlin herself, who calmly walked away from all the ruckus and went straight to her coach. Since the incident happened during the second quarter with Seattle ahead by 6 points, there was plenty of time left for Clark to rally her troops and turn the game around. She did that in admirable fashion, and the game became quite one-sided the rest of the way. Let's take a look at some of Caitlin's best moments from the showdown against Victoria Vivians and the Seattle Storm. Clark basically did everything she could to dominate the game. Drives to the basket, shots from several feet behind the three-point line, even crafty defensive plays that resulted in steals. When it was all said and done, Clark racked up 23 points and 9 assists compared to 0 points in 9 minutes by Vivians. More importantly, the Fever won by nearly 20 points despite coming into the game significantly below Seattle in the standings. While the game was fought very closely in the first half, the outcome was never in doubt after Clark flipped the switch and lifted the team onto her shoulders. That should be enough to teach Storm players not to try messing with Caitlin's mind. But it remains to be seen whether they learned the lesson. Since the two teams play in different conferences and have no regular season games left, their next matchup likely won't materialize until next season. Dijonai Taurasi is one of the most decorated players in the women's game, a legendary playmaker that has been the golden standard for point guard play in her generation. With 3 WNBA championships and an MVP award to her name, she has the bona fides to comment on anything in the game that she finds worthy of her attention. Still, she seems to forget that she is at the back end of her illustrious career, and that she can't hold the mantle for too much longer. Her reaction to the arrival of a much-hyped rookie class headlined by Caitlin Clark was understandable, but the mojo Taurasi is displaying doesn't really match her actual skills at this point. Here is how she welcomed the young phenom to the league when she was doing media rounds before the WNBA season started.
Reality is coming.
Okay.
There's levels to this thing, and that's just life. We all went through it.
Of course.
And you see it on the NBA side, and you're going to see it on this side, where you look superhuman playing against 18-year-olds, but you're going to come with some grown women that have been playing professional basketball for a long time.
While Diana's words don't appear to be too malicious, she is very confident that she is still head and shoulders above the rookie. That might have been true a decade ago when Taurasi was still in her prime. But at 42 years old, she isn't exactly in a position to threaten young players with a dose of reality. The gap between perception and reality became obvious for everyone to see once it was time for Dijonai Taurasi to meet Caitlin Clark on the basketball court and match up with her directly. A couple months later, she had the chance to do that, but things didn't exactly go to plan. Here is how Clark torched her in their first official WNBA meeting, which ended in a resounding win for the Indiana Fever squad. Caitlin Clark just missed a triple-double, finishing with 15 points, 12 assists, and 9 rebounds. While Taurasi did score 19 points for the Phoenix Mercury, she was unable to lead her team to victory and basically had to eat her words. Clark's brilliance was on full display, and her assists total proves that she refused to get caught up in an individual battle and looked to find her teammates whenever the defense overacted to the threat of her shooting. While Mercury has done its share of hating, no team has beefed with Caitlin Clark more than the Chicago Sky, and there are a couple of players who willingly took the villain role in this war of nerves. One of them is Chennedy Carter, a rugged and uncompromising player who likes to be the enforcer for her team, and sometimes goes too far in her desire to deter opponents from going into the paint. Carter is a good player, but her antics often overshadow real basketball qualities and put her in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. Much has been said about her flagrant foul on Caitlin Clark that occurred during a dead ball, and it remains one of the most glaring examples of unsportsmanlike actions against the rookie. Let's look at that infamous clip once again.
The question is, will they call it unnecessary? Chennedy Carter.
This happened right after Caitlin made a big three-pointer, so Chennedy Carter was clearly frustrated and found a terrible way to show it. This is not even a basketball play, so you can't justify it with any logical reason. It looks like a clear attempt at physical intimidation, something that we don't see often on basketball courts in men's or women's competition in modern times. She was whistled for a flagrant foul on the play, giving Clark an opportunity to score additional points from the free throw line and ultimately hurting her own team. The Sky lost that game and was eventually swept 3-0 in the season series against Fever, so her effort to get Clark out of her rhythms didn't exactly bring any positive result. While Carter was relatively diplomatic and civil in her post-game comments and denied having ill feelings towards Clark, her violent act still earned her the title of Caitlin Hater on the internet. A wiser girl would have tried to keep quiet for a while, but obviously Carter isn't very good at controlling her emotions and handling upsetting outcomes. A few months after her infamous shove of Caitlin Clark, Carter did another questionable thing to provide fuel for those who believe she is resentful towards the young sensation. This time, the trigger was a list of top WNBA players released by ESPN, which has Caitlin Clark ranked a dozen spots above Carter. Instead of congratulating those who earned a higher ranking, Carter published a very bitter post on social media. How I average less minutes and my stats top in the league, but I am at the bottom. This isn't adding up. The hate be so obvious, Carter wrote on her official Twitter account. She didn't mention Caitlin Clark by name, but her insistence that she has the best stats in the league is nothing short of delusional. For comparison, Carter was at the time averaging 16.9 points and 2.8 assists to go with 1.4 steals per game, while Clark had 17.9 points, league-leading 8.3 assists, and 1.4 steals per game. On stats alone, ESPN is totally justified for ranking Caitlin higher than her older foe, and the same could be said for other WNBA stars that appear near the top of this list. As much as Carter seems to begrudge Clark, she is not even her biggest adversary on the Sky team. That would be Angel Reese, who has a history of taunting Caitlin dating back to their college days. The two were competing for the Rookie of the Year award, which adds another layer to a soap opera that's been going on for years. Angel at least deserves credit for being honest about her provocations on the court and rivalry with Clark. Plus, she is a bit more sophisticated when talking with the media. Here is a very interesting quote from her on the topic of where the limits of trash talk should be.
Understand, like, if they think it's personal, but when I get between the lines, if friends or anything, if my teammate right here went to play for another team, I'm going to be competitive, I'm going to talk trash to her just because I'm super competitive and that's what we do. But off the court, we're going to kick in and have fun. So I think that's a part of the game, and just trying to normalize, like, trash talking is okay, but not taking it personal off the court. And obviously that has become a thing, and people are just trying to make it seem like it's something. But I love Caitlin, and I love her game, and I admire everything that she's done.
Okay, that makes some sense, or it would have had Reese stayed on talk only. She did not. And during a game against Caitlin Clark, she committed a flagrant foul that has drawn a media firestorm of epic proportions. While this foul admittedly was within the flow of the game, it resulted in another hit to the head for Caitlin. We can see how the transgression transpired, so you can form your own opinion whether it was motivated by Angel's hate for the Indiana guard. As usual, Caitlin was unperturbed and simply went on as if nothing happened, fixing her headband and high-fiving her coach. We wonder, however, if she might have made a little mental note that she has a debt to settle with the Chicago Sky. She approached the next game against Chicago with some extra urgency and came pretty close to a triple-double with 23 points, 9 assists, and 8 rebounds. Let's enjoy Clark's highlights from this game, which the Fever ultimately won. As you can see, there is plenty of evidence that trash-talking Caitlin Clark just doesn't work. The girl has ice in her veins and doesn't waste any headspace pondering insults and hits inflicted on her by her opponents. She stood her ground and discredited many of her haters, but never had to use words to do so, as her basketball genius requires no explanations. Despite having a track record of playing better when challenged, Clark will likely continue to face occasional incidents similar to those we just discussed. Her approach to silencing haters is perfect and will eventually prevail. She just needs to keep hitting more of those ridiculous shots and racking up big wins. After a while, WNBA players will realize they are playing with fire when they do something outrageous to rile up Caitlin Clark.